Developing musicianship online.
Hello, and welcome back to DM Online. Today we're going to dig a little deeper into Garageband and explore a couple of buttons that maybe you've been ignoring before. Those buttons contain many hidden treasures, and all you need to know is where to find them, and it'll make all the difference to your creative urges and the ways in which you experiment with your music. So I'm really excited to show you some of these great things that GarageBand have hidden away. In the top left of your GarageBand screen are two buttons that are very important to the deeper understanding of GarageBand and the possibilities. The first one is a pair of scissors, and the second one is a dial. Let's first of all have a look at the pair of scissors and what that has to offer. So, when you click on the pair of scissors, it'll bring up your waveform if you are in a waveform based channel. If you are in a MIDI based channel, it'll bring up the piano roll, and if you choose, you can actually go across to the score where you'll see the notation. But that's not all it does. So in the MIDI, we've used this before right at the beginning, the quantize function. So that's about timing. But you can also use the transpose function to shift keys if you don't want to drag the notation up or down on the piano roll. So that's quite a useful aspect. Now, if we go to a waveform based channel, then we're going to find a few other alternatives that are super useful. You'll notice that the options are region and track. I'm just going to address track for a second. So you'll see that there is a pitch correction, limit to key, and an enable flex option if you've chosen the microphone option for your track. This is in fact auto-tune, and it's quite a good auto-tune, better than some of the other plugins out there. So the key to it is that you must have your key of your piece set correctly if it's going to be effective. So in the case of my bass, I just click on the bass, it stays in that same menu section. This is playing it's a mode based on C major. I'm not going to go into the theory behind what I'm playing, except that it's basically playing C major with a B flat in it. The closest related key would be F major. So I'm going to change the key to F major and turn on the limit to key. That means that whatever happens in this bass part, if it's not a note from F major, it's going to try and adjust the tuning specific to F major. Okay, now the other option you see there is enable flex. And you may remember back to tempo that when we adjusted the tempo, the bass part really struggled to adjust accordingly. If you enable flex, then the program is enabled to adjust the actual waveform with an algorithm so that it actually sounds correct to the new tempo. So as long as we have that selected on any channel that has a waveform, we no longer have the issues we had in the tempo episode of having these strange tuning issues. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure all my tuning is correct. And that basically is one of the excellent tools that is available to us in the scissors button edit mode. Next, let's have a look at the dial. So the dial is to the left of the scissors. Now the dial is basically the center for effects. So this is going to be how you adjust your tone quality. It's going to also mean that you can drop in other alternatives. So let's have a closer look at some of the alternatives. When you're setting up a track that has a microphone, you'll get a generic compressor. Let's not worry about compression right now. And then if you go through the track recording settings down to beneath that where it says noise gate, underneath that is plugins, and if you click the triangle, you're going to find a couple of options for different plugins. Now you'll see master echo, master reverb. Those are the generic effects that we can bring in at any time using the automations we were using last time. And you'll see you can actually edit the level of effect for the echo and the reverb by clicking the edit button. I'm not going to do that now because the plugins provide a lot of exciting opportunities. You'll see a pitch correction thing here. That is actually the pitch correction that's being driven by that other part of the program, so you don't need to worry about that. GarageBand limits you to 4 plugins per channel. This is where if you want to get into high-end recording, you really need Logic, because Logic allows infinitive number of effects. But in this case, we're limited to 4. Sometimes they've filled up all the slots, and in order to add your own, you need to get rid of one of theirs. So if I go to the substation base, you'll see they've actually filled it up with 5 plugins. But if I customize it, I'm limited to 4. So I'm going to end up losing one of their plugins and then losing another plugin when I change it to my own. Probably not the best option there. But for the vocals, certainly if I wanted to get creative, I could click the arrows next to the where there's an empty slot for an effect, and you'll see a whole bunch of possibilities coming up. Now these are from delays and distortion and things like compression, which is what you find in dynamics, graphic equalizers, filters are like things like that change and alter the sound, same as modulations. They're things like phases and flanges and that kind of spacey sort of effect you can add to something. Pitches to do with pitch correction. Reverb, so in this case the reverb has a lot more control. These reverbs have a whole collection of settings, and you can really design your own reverb to suit your needs. And then there's things like the specializer and the utility. The utility is good if you're getting into mixing and you want to gain what we call gain stage your channel. That means that you're controlling the volume of the channel and starting everything equal and then mixing based on your whole mix being at a particular volume. Okay, so there's so many things we could be looking at here. I'm just going to pick a couple of ones to show you how this works and the way we can incorporate the automations we were doing last week with this set of effects that are here. If you've taken the time to download some extras, you'll end up with extra effects coming up at the bottom of the list. Things like Melda Production has a whole collection of free downloadable plugins, and there's some really good stuff there. And if you've installed other software, sometimes it comes with filters that automatically come up in your GarageBand environment. So it's right at the bottom of the list. Okay, so let's go and set up a couple of effects. So just like last week, let's have a go at adding a reverb, but this time I want more control over the reverb. So I'm going to switch off the master echo, and I'm going to go down into my options where I can choose delay, and delay designer is probably a good option. So here's the delay designer, and from here we can go to multiple preset delays. These are based on timing. So if you've got a quarter note delay, that means a quarter note afterwards you should hear what you're actually getting in the delay. And there's a whole bunch here, there's lots of strange things. I'm looking for something that's a little bit slower coming in. We'll try the slow pan at a quarter note. Now you'll see dry and wet signal. So dry is the unaffected signal, wet is the affected signal. So if I go to my automations like I did last session, clicking A, and I go down into the volume section and pull up the menu, down in the delay at the bottom that's now appearing is the dry and wet signal. So if I don't want delay in my mix, I click the wet, I make a line in the automation for wet, and I pull it out of the mix. So I now have no affected signal in the first part and affected signal after I get to that final word. Let's have a listen.
DM, developing musicianship online.
And there you go, that's what happens with a custom delay. Let's now switch it out for a custom reverb. So I click where my delay effect plugin is, and I switch that from the delay down to the reverb, and I'm going to choose Platinum Reverb. Now again, we have a lot of factory settings, and like I said in the previous episode, reverb is about simulating a space, a reflective space. So if I go to church, this is going to provide me the sort of ambience I would find in a church building, and again you can see the wet signal and dry signal. In terms of reverb, that wet signal and dry signal mix is really important. You can make it more subtle using less of the wet signal and just having it there without being really in the face. Okay, again, once you've got the effect in the plugin, you'll find it down here in the actual automations, and we can adjust the wet signal to bring it in or out. So this time I'll put the wet signal on the whole track, but I'm just going to make it say 30% or no 20% rather than 50%, which would be excessive. Now let's have a listen.
DM, developing musicianship online.
So that's custom reverb. Let's have a look now at one other possibility. So instead of reverb, let's go to something like Exciter, which is under the specialized filters. Now Exciter, sub-bass, these are all things where the computer will add other frequencies. So it's like adding a graphic equalizer template that's boosting certain signals. Now, again, the presets in these effects are well worth playing with. I'm going to have a little bit of edge addition to the singing in this chant. Now, when you want to compare the effect, there is a switch, an on-off switch on the left-hand side of the plugin. So you can switch it off, play it, switch it on, play it, and compare the effect. So this is with the effect turned off.
DM, developing musicianship online.
And now I'm going to trigger the effect I've added on and see what the effect is.
DM, developing musicianship online.
And you'll hear how much that cleans up the sound. Now this all comes down to like EQing and graphic equalizers. I could do a whole entire session on that, and I will later. It's a complicated concept, but it does make a big difference to your final product. So go and dig into the plugins and see what you've got. I'll leave a couple of links to some free plugins, but they're easy to look up online. There's great auto tuners, there's some interesting fun types of things you can add to your GarageBand custom list of plugins, and they do open up your creative possibilities considerably. Go and have fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
DM, developing musicianship online.